Hello and welcome to the AI Show brought to you by Lenovo. I'm your host Emily Barrett and I'm thrilled to be your guide through the fascinating world of artificial intelligence. In each episode we'll dive into the AI universe, exploring the latest innovations, the people behind them and how these technologies are shaping our future. On this episode we'll be joined by Andrei, who I'll be discussing the importance of data in AI with. So let's begin as we take you on your journey through the world of AI. Hi, Andrei.
Hi.
Thanks very much for coming in today. We really appreciate it. So usually we start just by doing a little bit of an intro. So do you want to tell us a little bit about your background and where you're from?
Sure. Thank you for having me. My background, a few words is I started in engineering, and then many of people in the data space, I started in the Hadoop world, 2008, 2010, and then moved into consulting, and from consulting into pre-sales because it was much more dynamic even than consulting. I do like dynamic projects. So now I'm here at Stratio, leading the architecture discussions in Northern Europe, and
So coming from that data analytics background, I guess that gives you a little bit of a different way of looking at artificial intelligence than people who are coming at it not from that background.
Yes, I mean, you probably know as much as I do. There was a hype in early 2010s about data and how data can be used, and I think we've seen that afterwards with AI, now with Gen AI. And basically it's the same, more or less, cycle that we are going through, where people discuss, they want things, but then they realize, okay, what do I have to do in order to make that actually work?
Yeah, okay. So we'll dive, I think what we'll do is we'll dive a little bit into that. What do they actually have to do to make it work in a second. But do you just want to tell us a little bit about Stratio to start with?
So Stratio was founded in 2014, so 10 years in the market. And we have very large customers in EMEA. And what we do is basically we provide a platform which allows every user inside an organizations to consume that data with business context. And those users can be BI users, can be application people building a data application, or can be business users which are looking through Gen AI at that data basically.
And I think that's one of the big questions that I know I'm certainly getting asked a lot is we've got all of this data. We go back to, as you mentioned, 2009, 2010, where everybody was being told, collect your data, keep your data. There are insights in your data. And everybody now has these piles of data and they're going, great.
Yeah.
Now what? We are, 14 years down the line. What do we do with all this data that we've kept? And how can we intelligently look at that data and get access to it? So what would you say the biggest challenges that people are facing are in terms of looking at that data?
It's understanding the data, basically. I mean, and I think the problem was in 2010, if, again, probably remember, people starting giving up of actual data modeling that was happening 20, 30 years ago inside the warehouse. And now they started talking about schema or read. I don't care how I put the data, what structure, what format, but when I read the data, then where I decide how I want to read it or how I want to consume the data. So they lost this idea of I need to really model the data because they thought storage is commodity, I can store everything. So with that, at that point in time, they don't just lost basically, the modeling of the data, but they actually lost the context of the data. So, and going further, when you don't have context necessarily, or you don't model your data, and people will not be able to understand what data you have, and then even Gen AI or AI in general, not Gen AI in general will not be able to understand that data. I think that's the big problem.
Yeah, and certainly I think that's what I see the big problem at the moment is generally when I'm talking to enterprises, they go, right, what can we learn from AI? What can AI tell us? And the first question back is always, well, what data have you got? Because ultimately AI is a data analysis tool, right? It's there to look at the data you have. or generate data based off the data you have, but you have to have that data and you have to have an understanding of that data before you can get started on that more advanced analytics piece, which is where AI, ML, DL, all those things kind of sit. So do you have any top tips for people who want to get started? How do they go about starting to look at what data do I have? How do I know what's there?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I always say, by the way, is if a human being, if a person can't understand the data, a machine will never be able to understand.
Very true.
So going back to what you just said, but in terms of tips and tricks, the way actually we also position Stratio is like, we don't really believe, and I think we didn't see this as being very successful, this idea of I'm going to extract knowledge from data without defining what knowledge, I want to extract. So even the way our product works, you actually, and we talk about this business data layer in our product, is you define that for your business. You know what business terms you want to define. You know what is the actual assets, the data product, all those information that you want to extract from the data. So what I would advise companies first to get data modelers, to get people that actually know how to define that data model, and then try to map that data model to the actual technical data, to the actual physical data. If you just go and say, I'm going to buy software, and I'm going to use that software to extract knowledge, the chances that they will extract something useful are going to be very low. I mean, we were talking a few minutes ago before the podcast about, how we, in the Nordics, we just came from Data Innovation Summit, and they are actually hiring, and you can see every conversation we had there. We had over 100 meetings. We talked with, the largest banks in the Nordics, largest retailers in that space. They are all hiring information modelers, people that, they know how to translate business questions, actually a model, a data model, which then will be mapped to the physical layer, to the physical data. So yeah, yes. I think that's my first advice is don't just hire engineers and try to figure it out. Try first to understand what you're trying to achieve. Try to find people which know how to model that. And then, in the end, data engineers are now commodity. You'll find data engineers in the market, to do that, to help you to bridge that gap between the model and the data model and the actual data, physical data.
Yeah. And I think that what you've just said there is really interesting. It's about being able to discern what information you need to answer that business problem. And then you can look at where is that data? How do I access it? But if you don't know what you're looking for, how are you going to find it?
Yeah.
So it's a really interesting perspective and a good way to look at things. So do you have any kind of examples of places where you've gone in and this strategy's been implemented and worked for them?
Yeah, in all I would say the big customers that we have, where they started using our software, they actually shifted their mindset from actually being an engineering-focused organization to being an organization where they first try to understand, what are the use cases they are trying to deliver. Very public information, largest customers that we have, Santander Bank, where we have deployments across multiple jurisdictions, multiple countries, BBVA, all those banks, but not just banks, we deal with other verticals. They all, for example, when we talk about regulatory reporting, as an example, they shifted their mindset from, okay, I'm going to produce a lot of views of the data, a lot of, aggregations of the data that will be later used for reporting into, okay, what type of reporting do I need to provide? How do I start thinking about, creating this semantic layer to empower that reporting to be able to make dynamic changes there. So if the regulatory organization is coming and asking us a different question, I can easily change it versus, going on the other way around, whereas I'm going to produce some technical data products, technical data set that I'm going to shift it or provide it to my SMEs and they will have to use it. So we see that shift from, going from technical engineers, technical people to actually, the business side. That's one example,
Yeah, so I think that's a really interesting shift that you've said there, from going from that, this is technically what we can produce and we're going to produce this very technical document, to actually coming at everything from what does the business need? What does the business want? What is going to be the best thing to produce for our business? And being able to produce that rather than going well, this is what we've got. How do we make that fit what our business needs?
Yeah. I guess another example just on a similar topic is, for example, a very large, probably the largest retailer in South America. They are, again, a big customer of us, and the way they work is basically they don't have technical people producing assets, but the way they work, they have a informational modeling team. The business is saying, I need to answer this new question, and that goes to that layer, and again, those information models can be attached to different teams' data. They have technical peers which are attached to them, but that goes to this team. They decide, okay, can I answer based on my current data model the question? If not, I'm going to enhance that, and I'm going to ask the technical team to implement it. But it's not like it's not a question. It's not like just let's produce stuff which will be later on consumed, because there is not much value. It always is a question from the business, which can be finance, can be marketing, can be sales, can be people in the supply chain. I mean, there are different parts of the business that can go and ask those questions, but it's always about making sure what is produced makes sense for the business, basically.
And that is really, really key here, because one of the biggest reasons AI projects fail is because there are no defined business outcomes. It's a shiny technology, everybody wants to try it, and that's wonderful, but that then falls into the producing things for producing things' sake. Yeah. And that is not where we see that ROI that businesses need to see, right? And I think what you've just discussed there does really hammer that home, because it is about making sure that you're producing something that is useful for the business, something that the business actually wants an answer to, rather than just say, I've chucked all my data at something. What can it tell me? Yeah. Let's see. And don't get me wrong, sometimes that can be an interesting exercise, and you can find out things that you maybe didn't know you knew. But when you're looking to create that business value, actually going, well, if I can say this is this particular regulatory question that I need to be able to answer to avoid these fines, there's a really strong business case there for doing that work, right? Whereas let's just see what happens it's much harder to build a business case around that.
Yeah. I mean that's why I think, again, looking in the conversation we are having, when we talk to people that want to implement AI or Gen AI, it's mostly business-driven use cases. I mean, that's actually also a problem, I would say, because they don't really understand what is needed to be able to deliver those capabilities. But at the same time, we don't see any more like science project too much. I think that was I'll say 2015, 2020. So there was a 5 years period there before COVID where there was a lot of like science project where there was a lot of money on the table. People were data science teams were growing fast. They were hiring. They were doing science projects, trying to derive value from the data. Now I think there is a shift where we see the owners of actually AI projects are becoming CFOs, like CMOs, like the exact level people, which are demanding certain specific use cases to be solved. I mean, one of the examples around this area is like we are talking with one of the large broadcasters here in the UK, where they want to see data from marketing campaigns, and they want that to be directly exposed to the marketing team. I mean, it's the same in our organizations. We run marketing campaigns. We would like the marketing team to have access to that without having to go through an engineer, or we don't want them to go to a dashboard, which that dashboard is maybe static, maybe it's not having the data refreshed, maybe it's not really what they need at all. So then that's why I think there is this shift that we see in this space. I think.
Yeah, so just being able to dynamically query that data and get those updates in real time. And I think that is especially important when we start talking about things like marketing campaigns, because having that insight enables you to adapt your strategy, right? To be able to see that ROI. So you can work out, rather than running a marketing campaign, getting to the end of that campaign and going, right, how did that go? You can interrogate it as that campaign is going to work out if you need to adjust things. True. And for a business, that's, prevents you just chucking money at these campaigns without knowing how they're going along the way.
Yeah, I mean, again, if you're looking at, and I know we touched on it, there are different type of AIs,
Yeah.
But if from our perspective, because Gen AI, it's a big focus right now, and we see a lot of execs asking for Gen AI to be implemented by engineering. I would say, from this perspective, going back to this, making that data available to operational people, that actually make decisions, is the benefit of Gen AI versus, I would say, AI, and it's something that we see that. It's not because Gen AI will produce those results for them, but Gen AI will give them access to that data without having to rely on actual engineers.
Yeah.
As long as the data, of course, is the right quality, is with business context, and that's where Stratio is playing, basically. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that bit you've just mentioned there at the end is so important. You've got to make sure that data is the right data, and that it's good quality data, right? Because without that, you're in a bit of a issue.
Usually when I go to and discuss to prospects, I give them this example, which is very easy to understand because we all have loans, mortgages, maybe we do have a bit of investment, that we are making. So, and you go and if you're inside a bank or an organization, tell me about a customer. The first question, if you ask that to a Gen AI or even to a machine, tell me something about, my customers. The machine will not know, are you talking about, which is the context, which type of customers, So, yeah, that's why, when we pitch and we discuss about Stratio and the semantic layer, we because our semantic layer is going to embed that information, so you know exactly, and not just humans, not just the person who is going to look at the data will understand, but also the machine and the LLMs will understand that. That's the value added there. And without that, we see those benchmarks, which are right now public, where you go and you ask questions about the data without semantics, it's going to be whatever 40-50% accuracy. You go and you put context to that, you get 95+% accuracy on your questions. Yeah, so I would say it's
context is really important. It is, generally in life it's important, right? But I think especially when we're talking about interacting with data sets and interrogating those data sets for answers, having that context there is super important, because as you say, it increases the accuracy of the answer that you're going to get back. Because if the algorithm has no idea what you are talking about, it will give you an answer.
Yeah.
But if it knows what you're talking about, then great. It can actually give you the answer that you're looking for. Yeah. Similarly to a human, right? If someone comes up to you and asks you a completely out of context question, you're going to go, I have no idea what you're talking about. Can I have some context, please? Or I will start just shooting random answers at you that may or may not answer your question. It's a very similar proposition here.
So just the risk is with a machine that might give you an answer which is not actually, coming from your data, or which actually is not, correct, because the machine, actually humans will do the same. Probably, if some people will do the same. But with the machine, I think, now with Gen AI over AI, I think with AI it was much easier, because if I look at data science, machine learning, and whatever predictive analytics that used to be done, it was done by technical people in a very controlled way, which meant they were able to understand if the results were actually easier. It was much easier to understand if the results provided by the algorithm were correct or not. But with Gen AI, because we open that door to everyone now, it's much more difficult to actually, control that. I mean, we were talking to one of the largest retailers here in the UK, and they were telling us, well, we are trying to put a Gen AI in production, and we've created a chatbot. Was a big project for our data team, and then the people, they started asking, I'll say, stupid questions like, can you tell me the recipe for a spaghetti, which is not something that the system should allow you, but because the LLMs can't really control what they will just answer any type of questions.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and then you end up with, well, something completely inaccurate. But I think also because as humans, as the general public, we're conditioned to accept that whatever we get back from a machine, if we ask a computer a question, we expect the answer to be accurate, right? And actually, when we start looking at these Gen AI applications, we need to start engaging more of our critical thinking again and go, well, where's this answer come from? Is it accurate or is it not?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, again, for me, coming from data makes a lot of sense, and from the engineering side, because you had that type of mindset where you wanted to understand, okay, what exactly it means. I don't like black boxes. I never really liked black boxes, and it's not like in the end, LLMs are not black boxes. They are, but for when I'm talking about people in general, the consumers, yeah, for them it is. So, but if you're looking at what's happening inside or what type of controls you can put around, that's something that I think people are still struggling to grasp exactly how to do it. But it will have to be mandatory because, I mean, right now we see so many failed projects because of, the LLMs are just going too wide, asking questions in ways which people they didn't even think they should. So, or I mean, think about Air Canada. I think it was in the news when the chatbot they provided discounted tickets, and it was a big problem for them, because the whole model wasn't actually controlled properly. So, but we see that. I mean, we see that. Yeah. I think we all see that in after 18 months now, there is much more this control added to this world, and governance added to the world of Gen AI, and people start to understand those are projects which can be delivered with these new technologies. Those are projects which actually we have to go back to AI. I mean, yeah. So I think we are in that phase, I would say, where the hype is gone or partially gone, hopefully, and then we start actually looking at this through a different set of lens, where it's like, okay, what can actually be done? How can we actually make this happen?
Yeah, how can we make this happen? How can we make it useful, and how can we ensure that it is, producing things that are actually accurate and the answers are coming from where we want the answers to come from, rather than somewhere else.
Yeah.
And also, I think that user education piece is starting to happen now as well. People are becoming slightly more aware because, as you say, there have been these news stories. There've been these cases that have been high profile around some of the dangers of using LLMs. And I think people are just starting to think, okay, actually, how could this go wrong? Do I want my company to be the next Air Canada or whatever it is, where we do have a slightly out of control LLM in the business? And people are, as you say, becoming more aware of that. But I also think that there are more companies around who are helping people overcome that right now. Because as the need for that has grown, the industry's capabilities to meet that need have obviously grown as well.
I mean, we can see that in the market right now. There is a lot of funding that goes to those new startups born in this Gen AI era, which is there's a lot of money, and it's good actually, because companies there is a need for process, there is a need, as I said, for governance, there is a need for tools to support those processes and governance for these large organizations, to be able for them to actually deliver value. I mean, again, if we're looking at the big players here, Google, Microsoft, they make money. I was looking at the reports from the last quarter, and everyone is talking about, yeah, GenAI makes sense, they make money, they start making money because they introduced that in their tools. But most of the use cases that we are looking at are delivered by them. They're either co-pilot use cases where they generate code, which I wouldn't say is not is not generating business value, but still, or we are talking about use cases where there is summarization of text, where there is like documents, able to search through documents, or again going to generate images or generating stuff. We don't see much being done in the space of enterprise data, structure, non-structure, where you actually need to extract from data, which might be your own data information. And that's where, again, going back to what we do as Structure, that's our focus, because we are more focused on when it's not like, being able to search through PDF is not important, but it's more like, how do I make the other data, which is data that I have in so many different systems, available to be accessed via natural language without having to retrain expensive models? How do I make that whole process without actually creating another? We are talking about vector database a lot. Another funding, a lot of funding went to vector database. We have, I think, 15, 20 vector databases that have appeared in the last 18 months. But vector database will just create another silo of data. Yeah. We are going to another cycle of the same mistakes that we are doing. So the question is, how do for us, and the way we are looking at this, it's like, how do we make that data available through natural language and through GenAI to all the users without having to move that actually, all that data.
Yeah.
And those are use cases where I think they are much more difficult to deliver than the ones which are in production today. They are higher value, and we'll see a lot of efforts put by a lot of companies in this space.
It's a tricky problem, right? Let's face it. So thanks very much for coming in today to have a chat about how we can break through those data silos and the importance of understanding that data. Really, really appreciate your time. And thank you very much for everybody who has watched this episode. Please do join us again for the next episode.